All right, this week on the Suns, Mike, we have an interesting interview. We've been hearing a lot lately about this new phenomenon of the hometown hero and kids staying local and coming to UCF and wanting to be a part of this. But we have a guy this week on the show, Mike, who legit is a hometown hero, is sort of a legacy hero, if you will. Somebody who grew up rooting for the Knights, grew up as this is his hometown team, and got to realize his dream of actually putting on the black and gold and playing for UCF. Made some really big contributions both on and off the field. Happy to have former UCF wide receiver Stephen Martin join us on the show tonight. Stephen, first off, appreciate you taking some time to join us on the show. Hope all is well with you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you heard my intro there. You are a hometown, a legacy, a guy who grew up with UCF. You don't see that a lot, unfortunately, these days, right? Where UCF being a younger school. So take us through kind of your early memories. When did UCF become a part of your life as you were growing up?
Well, yeah, UCF has really always been a part of my life. Both my parents, they went to school there, they met there. And so since we stayed in the area, I grew up going to all the games. I went to the first game ever on UCF campus, the Texas game back in 2007. I mean, I was just 5 years old, but that's kind of where everything started for me.
Was it a foregone conclusion that, hey, when college time comes around, Stephen's going to UCF? Was that, there's no doubt about it, like you can't go anywhere else? Was that just a foregone conclusion for you?
Well, my older brother actually went to UCF, so of course my entire family was pushing for me to go there. And I was getting recruited by a few other smaller schools, but I ended up deciding to walk on to UCF and eventually earned a scholarship. So I was really blessed to experience that.
All right. Well, before I can judge, what were the other schools so I can tell if you made a good decision? What other schools were recruiting you at that point?
Well, the biggest one that was recruiting me for football was Florida Tech, and it's probably a good thing I didn't end up going there because they canceled their program like 2 months later.
Yep.
So
wise decision. Yep, good one.
The other one was Embry-Riddle, and that was actually to play basketball because I was a basketball player in high school.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So those are my top three, and I think I made a good choice.
I'm gonna say after quick analysis here, I think you made a good call.
Right.
All right, so you were only 5 years old that day at the Texas game. How much do you remember of that one? You can't remember too much, no?
Not much. There's really just picture evidence. That's about all I have.
So which games did you go to growing up that you do remember? What were some of your best memories as a fan at UCF?
Yeah. So a few of the games that I remember I went to the Rutgers bowl game in 2009 where we got beat pretty bad. That wasn't very fun.
Mohamed Sanu did a backflip in the end zone.
Yeah.
I don't remember that, but I do remember going to the game and sitting in Tropicana Field up in the nosebleeds. It wasn't very fun.
Yeah.
I also remember the Houston game in 2013. I was there for the War on I-4 in 2013. I was there for the War on I-4 in 2017, the Conference Championship game in 2017, Conference Championship game in 2018. I mean, I have a pretty long list of games that I've seen that I've been blessed to go to as a UCF fan.
And where do you guys sit?
We bounced around quite a bit. We started in the corner near the scoreboard. We moved a little bit. We moved probably to the 20-yard line on the Roth Tower side, closer to the scoreboard. And the Conference Championship game in 2018, we ended up getting a tickets from a friend. So we sat right on the 40-yard line on the press box side in the nicer chairback seats. So that was really fun.
Yeah. And then a couple years later, you find yourself at UCF walking on. How cool is that? And who were the guys on that team? Maybe other wide receivers that kind of took you under their wing that year?
Yeah. So I came onto the team in 2020. That's when I graduated high school, which was a little weird because of the COVID year with a bunch of the protocols. I didn't end up actually getting onto the team until during fall camp because there was a process for bringing people back. And I was coming in injured because I tore my ACL playing basketball in high school. So I was on like the last list of people that made it in right before the season started just because they could only bring so many guys back and I wasn't going to be able to get on the field anyway for practices. And some of the guys that were there, Trey Nixon was there, Marlon Williams, Jacob Harris. Really, it was an older group. And I would say Trey and Marlon kind of took me under their wing, mostly just kind of teaching me the ropes. But also, since I was injured, Mackenzie was kind of my mentor in a little bit because he was still recovering from his injury. and he ended up coming back on the scout team at the same time I did. So it was actually pretty cool to kind of work with him and catch passes from him and kind of get to see his perspective on how he sees the game. It taught me a lot just from that few weeks that I was on the scout team right before the season ended.
Stephen, we had Alec Holler on a few weeks back, and he talked about a very similar journey, being a walk-on, being injured, kind of being on scout team. What is that experience like for you when, again, you're a walk-on, so it's a little bit different, right, from some of the guys on scholarship, right? You're injured, so you're trying to rehab. You want to get on the field, right? You're trying to play scout team. What kind of goes through your mind? What are the struggles you're kind of going through as you're trying to navigate all that stuff? And, oh, by the way, be a college student as well.
It was definitely difficult, especially for me, because I ended up studying engineering at UCF, and I just finished my degree in the spring. So kind of balancing all of that was interesting, and with COVID as well. So you couldn't really meet a whole bunch of new people, talk to people, no in-person classes. So it was a little difficult to just kind of start off and kind of just finding a role, because it's hard to do that, especially coming into a new team where you don't know anybody. And I kind of feel like I'm going through that in the same way now that I'm at Samford. Just kind of find my role and find a group of guys that I really enjoy hanging out with. But it was definitely interesting and kind of hard to just kind of get over those first few hurdles. Once I did, I kind of fell right into place at UCF.
For those who don't know, what's the role of somebody on a scout team? I think the narrative is like you're running the other team's plays, right? You're giving them the looks the other team's going to have. What is the actual role of somebody on the scout team?
It's kind of exactly as you said. You're basically mimicking the team that you're about to play. And offensively, they normally what happens is you hold up, like the coaches that are running the scout team will hold up certain cards that will tell you exactly what to do and exactly like the depth of the route and the split. So it kind of gives the defense a feel for what it's going to look like in the game, so they can start calling out certain things that they might have tendencies of. Like if they get this certain split, they're more likely to run this route, or it'll be this play. And that's really all it is for the defense. It's about play recognition. And that's the biggest thing, because defense is all about finding tendencies and establishing a way you can find a leg up against the opponent, because if you can find a tendency that you can take advantage of, it'll get you a negative play, get a team behind the sticks, and it can get you off the field a lot faster.
This feels tricky. How do you navigate? So you obviously on the offense, right? I'm sure you want to score. But it's also important that the defense stops you. So when you're on scout team, are you like trying to score? Are you excited if you score a touchdown? Or are you like, man, I just scored, but our defense sucks? Like, how do you navigate like wanting to do well, but knowing if you do well, that means the defense didn't do well?
Well, actually, it's kind of the opposite though, because if you end up scoring on the scout team, then it kind of it gives the defense a learning point, because if they see that, it actually will stick in their head better. So if they make a mistake, they're more likely to remember the mistakes they made than the success that they had in practice. So if anything, it's actually a good thing, which is kind of counterproductive, you might seem. But if they see it in practice, they'll learn before they get to the game. And you do end up repeating a lot of plays if you're successful at it, because again, they want the defense to actually learn the splits, the tendencies. So at the end of the day, they're going to figure it out throughout the week, because you're going to be running the same plays. But it's kind of that learning curve, is that they want the defense to figure it out. They don't just want to spoon feed them the answers, because it's not going to be like that in the game.
Did you have a legendary scout team catch? Did you moss somebody, break a tap? You got to have that one legendary scout team play, Stephen, that you still tell your friends, like, dude, you didn't see it, but it's scout team one time. You got to have that one.
Yeah.
Play, right?
Well, I never really had that like insane catch, like the jaw-dropping catch, because they also told us they don't want us to jump for deep balls, just because they don't want to get any injuries, especially on the starting defensive guys. They just want you to be careful. So if there was ever like a 50-50 ball, they kind of just told you to stand down. But the one that I do remember was in my freshman year, working with Mackenzie. I ran a 6-step out, and I just remember as soon as I turned my head, it was like the ball was in my hands. Like I didn't even get to move my hands. And that's just the accuracy, the type of player Mackenzie was. He could anticipate things very well. He was very accurate with the throws. And that was kind of like almost my welcome to college moment, because it was like everyone is the best at what they do here. So you kind of have to expect that as you move on to the college world, that people are going to be insanely good, and you kind of have to expect that.
You got to play under Josh Heupel the first year. His offense, as a fan, man, it seemed like you guys were running plays so fast. Let the secret out. How did you guys know the plays in advance like that? Was it scripted? Was it just based on the last play? What's the secret?
I don't think I can really spill the beans on all of that, but I will say there was a lot of high tempo offense where you really just got one signal and you were expected to know what was coming. And that was really all about game preparation, understanding the game plan. Some things were scripted at times, but at the end of the day, you had to see the signal and get lined up fast. And that's kind of how the practices went with Coach Heupel, is that they they were even faster in practices because they want you to be able to go as fast as humanly possible, so that in the game it's actually slower.
So, okay, don't tell us everything, but like the wide receivers, you're looking at a specific guy, and maybe the offensive lineman is looking at somebody else because it's only one signal, or it's one signal for the whole team, and everybody knows what's going on.
Uh, it depended sometimes. When I was there, and they might have changed it, but it was one signaler that you had to know who it was, because there's always a bunch of dummy signalers, and then based on that signal, you had to interpret what you were doing based on where you were on the field.
Gotcha. And then after that year, Malzahn comes in. It's a completely different offense, kind of more run oriented. You as a wide receiver, what did you think about it? Did you like the change, or were you kind of disappointed you didn't get to really get the whole Heupel experience?
I wasn't disappointed because Coach Malzahn's he's a great coach, and I'm really blessed to play under him. And he was the one who gave me my scholarship, so I have nothing but good things to say about Coach Malzahn. But it was definitely a big shift, just the style of play. And even though I didn't get that full Heupel experience where they're throwing the ball all over the place, I really enjoy my time at UCF because it gave me opportunity to learn different perspectives. I mean, with Coach Heupel, it was kind of like an air raid type of offense, but with Coach Malzahn, it was a little not pro style, but definitely more oriented towards pro style run game with some college and really air raid style passing game. So it was a good mix, and it gave me opportunity to learn different things as a player. And if I ever wanted to get into coaching, it gave me some good background on the differences in the run game and how to implement it into an offense.
Is that something you're thinking about one day down the road, maybe coaching?
I've thought about it. It's not really on my bucket list right now, especially because I'm still playing and I got that degree in engineering, and that would be a pretty good gig for me once I stop playing football. But maybe way down the road, if I get tired of it, maybe I'll get into coaching, maybe at the high school level in Orlando.
Steve, I'm curious, take us in the locker room if you can. What was the overall team's reaction, particularly on the offensive side, right? To your point, people were rolling with Heupel, right? A lot of stats, a lot of yards, right? A lot of people putting some big numbers. Gus's system was obviously a little bit different, right? You have a quarterback in Dylan Gabriel at that point who threw a beautiful deep ball, a lot of air raid, right? You had a lot of fast guys on the outside, where Gus's system was different. How was the overall just change as an offense? Did it take the team a long time to kind of adjust? Were there still some people, and you have to name names, but were there still some people who were kind of like holding on to like, hey, we should do this instead, or hey, we used to do this? Was it harder than it looked on the outside, and kind of getting all that stuff mashed together?
Actually, it was a pretty seamless integration, especially because Coach Malzahn, he kind of took some things that we had in Heupel's offense and kept them around to build around the team's strengths. And some of those plays are still in his offense today. So it was kind of at first it was like the best of both worlds, where we were kind of doing a mix to kind of fit to the team roster and how it was built. So I do applaud Coach Malzahn because he kind of catered around his roster that he had at the time to really get the best of it. And Dylan had a pretty big say into that, because especially he was at the quarterback position, and he kind of ran the offense in a way, not calling the plays, but kind of catering to his skill set with the deep ball. And he just was able to throw the ball all over the field when he was there.
Well, take us to that moment for you, 2021. You finally get on the field. You get your first catch against Bethune-Cookman, right? So obviously walking on the team, injured, scout team. You're finally there. You're in the stadium that you went and visited as a kid, the team that you rooted for, and all of a sudden you're catching passes in the bounce house. What was that moment like when that first pass touches your hands, and you get that first 14-yard reception at UCF?
It really, like, time kind of slows down in a way, because at the end of the day, you're not thinking about it all at once. You're kind of just thinking about doing your job. And so it didn't really hit me until after the game, when I was getting a bunch of messages from some of my family and friends from high school, like, congrats on the first catch. And it kind of just hit me. I'm like, oh, I actually just caught a pass in a UCF game. So at the end of the day, like, it didn't mean much in the moment, but after the game, just kind of hearing that from my support group behind me, it meant a lot.
That season was, I think we went into that season with some high expectations. 2021, we start out with the Boise game, crazy finish. And then we go to Louisville, and there's a crazy ending to that game, and there's a bunch of injuries. What was the locker room like after that game? And knowing, one, that Dylan is going to be out for the rest of the year, and two, just like everybody else that was banged up coming out of there.
That was definitely one of the hardest games in my time at UCF, just because of the amount of injuries that happened that game. We were almost in the driver's seat the entire game, but just with all those injuries, it was kind of hard to, in a way, to just rebound from that. And obviously, we had our opportunities to win that game. And looking back, there's always different ways you can execute to get a win. But that was kind of like, I wouldn't say the tipping point in the season, but losing all those guys at once, it definitely hurt moving in the next week.
And then Mikey Keene takes over, true freshman. He did okay, but that first game we lose to Navy, right? Another tough loss. But what did you think of him as a true freshman, how he handled the whole situation coming in, not expecting to play probably at all coming into the year, and all of a sudden he's thrown into the limelight?
I thought he handled it like a pro. I mean, Mikey, he's a really good quarterback, and he was only like 18 years old in that first game. And he was just composed, he was calm, he was collected, and he just didn't let the moment get too big for him, it's hard to see from an 18-year-old just coming out of high school. And I think he ended up growing a lot that year into the player he is now. And that was kind of a good learning curve for him, especially as a young player, to get those nerves out of the way early in his career. So now he's flourishing more.
All right, I got to ask this question. This is me talking, so if this gets aggregated, this is my question. Can you explain to me the phenomenon with Joey Gatewood? It felt like we rolled Joey in at like the worst times to throw like a 2-yard pass to nobody, or we try to run a little quarterback power, never work. Can you explain sort of the phenomenon or the infatuation we had with trying to get Joey in the game? Because I felt like for a true freshman like Mikey, it kind of took him out of his rhythm at times. Like he's in a rhythm. That Navy game is a perfect example. He's in a rhythm, he's in a groove, and all of a sudden, like a crucial third down, we roll in Joey Gatewood. Like, can you explain the Joey Gatewood phenomenon to a fan or as somebody who's in the locker room?
Yeah, Joey had some interesting packages in that 2021 season because he was our most mobile quarterback. Him and Parker, they kind of went back and forth. And so they were kind of used as our dynamic dual threat quarterback, because that's just something that Mikey doesn't have under his tool belt. He's not a guy that's going to burn you with speed. So we kind of wanted to use him in a way where it could give the defense an extra thing to worry about, especially on third down when you can run some quarterback powers or read options or sweeps or whatever was in the game plan at the time. But it was just a different package that we had that you could use his legs as a weapon on third down.
Was it as a player in the team? Was it like, I know you never ever want to question a coach's play call, but was there ever a time you're like, right now this one's interesting? Was there a talk about when those would be called, or as an upperclassman, where some of the guys like, hey coach, like maybe now's not the time to do that kind of stuff?
At the end of the day, you can never question the coach who's calling the plays, but I think it's always in the back of people's head, especially when things aren't successful. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to put trust into Coach Malzahn. He's been doing this for a long time, and just putting the trust in him to make a good game plan is always the most important thing as a player. Because if you buy into the game plan, you're more likely to execute better.
I'm gonna take that as a yes. All right. So moving on the rest of the schedule, though. Last game of the year, Gasparilla Bowl, playing Florida. Again, you're a local kid. You grew up in Florida. You understand sort of what the quote unquote big three was around here. UCF obviously starts to make a name for himself, and we get Florida in the bowl game. Obviously, super motivated for a lot of us fans. What was it like for players, and you specifically being a local kid, a hometown kid, knowing that you're gonna have an opportunity to lace them up against Florida?
It was really special for me, especially growing up around as a UCF fan, because Florida was always kind of like that distant rival, the team that everybody looked up to as a program to kind of become the next big thing, because Florida was always like the number one in Florida State, the number one teams in the state, and being able to go against them in a bowl game was just a big opportunity for us as a program to kind of cement ourselves as a powerhouse in the state. And I think that's what we did, especially with that bowl game and moving into the Big 12 2 seasons later. It kind of put us on the map in a way for the national fan base of college football that the UCF is starting to become a big thing and something to look out for in the future.
What was the trash talk like during that game? Was a lot of talking between guys? Was there a lot of, I'm sure a lot of guys knew each other, a lot of back and forth on the field during that game?
Yeah, it got a little chippy sometimes, and that kind of just comes from people knowing each other. And a lot of players knew each other from high school, and they've played each other in the past. So it kind of gives an extra chip on your shoulder to want to beat the guys that you came from and played in against high school. And also being Florida rivalry, it's another big thing because you want to be able to um, cement yourself as like the state team at that time.
Who was the biggest trash talker for UCF? Who was the guy that talked the most on that UCF team?
On that 2021 team?
Yeah.
It was probably Divaad Wilson. He was a big trash talker, but he backed it up quite a bit, so you can't even really get mad at him for that.
See, I was going to guess Big Cat as a trash talker.
He was, but Divaad he was pretty chippy. I mean, he would get under your skin, and that was kind of in his skill set, because if you could get under your skin, it would get you out of your game pretty fast.
Are there rules to trash talking, Stephen? Are there areas you don't go, things you don't say? Are there rules, or is it literally like whatever goes on the field?
I've never been a big trash talker myself, so I don't really get into that world. Most of the time when people talk trash to me, I just don't really listen. My biggest response actually to trash talkers is I just laugh at them, because if you think you're getting under my skin, it's not going to happen.
So Divaad never got under your skin during practice. He didn't have anything for you?
He mostly didn't really talk to me. I guess he kind of knew it was like, yeah, I'm not getting this guy, so he kind of gave up early.
Did you have a lot of friends that went to Florida or relatives that you talked to before the game or after the game?
I had some relatives that went to Florida. Some of my extended family on my mom's side then went to Florida, but really a lot of my family went to UCF. So everybody was kind of in my corner for that game.
Nice. All right, so the next year, 2022, Mikey's still there, and then in comes John Rhys Plumlee, and all of a sudden we have a quarterback controversy. Who should be the quarterback? Still, people are debating it to this day. You're in there in practice. You're catching passes from both those guys. In your opinion, who should have been the starting quarterback?
I can't make that decision. I mean, they were both excellent, and it really was a true battle. They didn't make the announcement until like the end of fall camp, just because nobody could really decide. It was that close. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it ended up working out the way it did, but I couldn't make a decision based on the fall camp results. It was just that close.
Nobody's style either way fit you better. Like, I don't know what do you prefer?
Based on my role, I was mostly used that year as a perimeter blocker. So in a way, John Rhys's skill set actually ended up working out for me better because of the role that I had for that team, which was kind of to do the dirty work on screens and blocks and downfield blocking. So using him more as a mobile quarterback actually got me on the field more.
All right, so there's your answer, JRP.
So he did know. Look at that. So that season starts off. We have a tough loss at home to Louisville, right? Again, second year in a row, Louisville sort of comes in and did they just have our number on defense? Was it just something that they were able to just understand our system a little bit better? Because again, 2 years in a row, they just seem to kind of come in and obviously one at their place, one at our place. Again, the game at Louisville, a lot of injuries, but it seemed like they just hit us in the mouth. They were really physical with us on both games. Did they just have our number? Is that such a thing in sports of just this team just got you figured out?
Sometimes, I mean, it really is dependent on the game, because a team can have your number some games, but also you can just not play very well. And I just felt like in that game as an offense, we just didn't play very well. And that was kind of an interesting game for me, because that was actually my only start at UCF. I started that game against Louisville in 2022 because Kobe had to step away for some personal reasons. And so that was my only game that I started. And it kind of, in a way, like it was my way of stepping up and helping to contribute. And I didn't get any targets that game, but it definitely felt like I was a part of that loss. And looking back at it, it was like I could have done better, and I could have helped us win the game if I just executed better on a few different plays. So it kind of, as an offense, there's different plays you can pick and choose where people didn't execute, and then that's what kind of amounts to a loss as an offense. If you could just pick a few plays that you could get back, then it'll be a whole different game. So
if I had to describe the 2022 season to you, I describe it this way: like we're sprinting, we're doing really great, and then we turn a corner and get hit by a bus. Because it felt like multiple times we'd have a big win, we'd be in a big roll, and then somehow just get knocked down and sort of just smacked a little bit in the face there. The first one was the game at ECU. We've had multiple people on the show. A lot of them have loosely confirmed there's rumors about a playbook being around and ECU's defense knowing plays. We got a wink, wink and a nod from people who said that they think that's true, but no one really knows that's true or not. But ECU just beat us up that night, Stephen. What the hell happened? I know, again, the playbook thing, it is what it is. If that's true, whatever. But, I mean, they just beat us up that night. What the hell happened that night at ECU?
So I've actually heard some interesting things about that ECU team, especially because there was a coach that came over from ECU. And I remember he told us going into the season, like ECU has that game circled on their calendar. And I don't know how true that is, but apparently they were pretty bitter about the 2021 loss, and it was a close game and a hard fought battle. But I think they went into that season with that game kind of circled on their calendar with an extra chip on their shoulder that they wanted to beat us that year. And they played extremely well that game. There's nothing else I can really say. I mean, offensively, it seemed like they played a perfect game. I don't think they turned the ball over. They were very efficient in the passing game. They popped some big runs. Defensively, they forced turnovers. They got off the field. I mean, it was an all-around just really good performance by their team that game. And I just kind of have to give my hats off to them because I don't think they could have played any better, honestly.
Did you guys hear the rumors or the speculation about a rogue play call sheet or something that went over there? And after you heard it, were you like, they did seem to know what we were running. Like, did any of that click at all to you? Like that could be plausible?
I heard a rumor about it. I don't know how true it is. I never really looked into it, but maybe. I don't know. I really don't.
Well, then, hey, so we rebound from that. Cincinnati, we finally take them down. It's been a long time since we beat Cincinnati. We beat them. We go to Memphis. Mikey pulls out a great game. The Holler Hop, I believe, was born in that game, a late win. Then we go to Tulane, who at that point was ranked 17. JRP plays fantastic. We have a great game. And sky's the limit, Steven. This is it, baby. We're going to the championship game. We're going to host this thing. It's going to be great. And then a little 11 a.m. kickoff against Navy falls on the calendar. And again, I'll ask you, Steven, I know Navy's a tough team. I know the cut blocks, the chop blocks, they're really difficult to prepare for. What happened at that Navy home game? That's still one to this day that I didn't play in that game. FYI, just kiss you. No, I didn't play in that game. But I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes still screaming angry about that game. I just don't understand that one. Maybe you can explain it to me.
As a player, that game definitely still haunts me and probably the rest of the team just because of the things that were on the table that were going forward after that game. And it was a game that things just weren't clicking offensively. And I thought our defense played lights out against that Navy option. I think we held them to like 14 points or something like that. It was really hard fought game by our defense, but just offensively, we just didn't get it done. And that was the biggest thing.
I guess I know there's probably a lot of reasons. Like, how does that happen? And or how are adjustments not made? So I remember distinctly, I think his last name was Marshall, number 1 on Navy. I think he pretty much lived in the backfield. I think Mikey could have handed the ball off to him. He was in the backfield so quickly. At some point, was there recognition like, hey, we got to switch things up? Or were they just were they disguising things that much that kind of kept everybody off kilter?
Yeah, it was definitely kind of hard to make adjustments, especially the way they were using him. They were moving him around a whole bunch, but we made an adjustment later in the second half that was kind of just focus on him. But he definitely had a lights out game against us, and he was the one player that kind of derailed our offense that game.
Was anything to the 11 a.m. kick? I know a lot of people talked about, for fans, it was kegs and eggs, right? But for you all, 11 a.m. was probably not your norm. Was there anything to that early kickoff time?
It's definitely it's harder to get up for an early game, especially just because of the quick turnaround from getting up and doing your last meetings to get into the stadium pretty early. that was the earliest that I've ever kicked off. That I guess it was the earliest I've ever kicked off. So it was definitely an adjustment, but it's definitely not an excuse because we always have to come into a game prepared, and we can never take it for granted a game day, even if it's at a different time than normal.
All right, I asked you about the quarterbacks earlier, but the one touchdown you did catch was a pass not from either one of those guys, but from Isaiah Bowser against Memphis. Take us back to that play. Your thoughts in the end zone, holding the ball, and the celebration and all that.
It was definitely my most special moment at UCF, especially just because of the circumstance of that game. It was a tied game, first quarter. We kind of knew we were going to get into a dogfight that game, so I was kind of expecting it because that was the scenario where that play was supposed to be run in that game. So kind of seeing it, I was like, my heart started beating pretty fast. And if you actually look back at that play, they had like 4 guys kind of in the area where I was supposed to catch the ball. And pre-snap, I was thinking, oh, this definitely is not going to work. And so I kind of got a little scared at that moment, but they ended up all kind of biting for the fake, and I was wide open in the back of the end zone. But that moment was especially special for me because both my parents and my grandparents made the trip for that game. So having them there in that moment, seeing it live in the stadium was definitely special for me, and seeing them after the game and being able to have them support me there was really big for me in that moment.
Did they let you keep the ball?
No, I don't have the ball.
Oh man! And what about celebration? I don't remember. Did you spike the ball, or did you think about doing a dance or something, anything like that?
No, I'm not a big celebration guy. I normally like to just get with the big boys, and I ended up Paul ended up raising me up in the end zone, and that was kind of cool because he was my roommate at the time. So having my roommate on the field and then him picking me up, there's a pretty cool picture of it that I still have of us in the celebration. But definitely a special moment for me.
Wait, so I'm sorry, Paul Rubelt you're talking about?
Yeah.
So he's 6'10", you're 6'5". You had to be like 9 feet tall if he picked you up. Like you had to have like towered out of the stadium if he picked you up.
Yeah, I think I was almost in line with the crossbar of the goalpost with my head. So I'm not one that's afraid of heights, but if someone else was in my shoes there and they were afraid of heights, they might have gotten a little scared for sure.
All right. Well, the end of that year, we did end up still playing in the conference championship game, despite the loss to Navy.
Mhm.
But JRP's banged up. Mikey Keene decides to opt out, and we have Tommy Castellano start the game. What do you think, first of all, about the opt out? I know everybody else on here says they had no problem with it. It's a business decision. They get it. But to me, as a fan, the guy's been on the team all year. You guys are working towards the one goal of playing for a championship. You're finally there for the game, and he decides he's not playing.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the end of the day, I have to respect his decision. I mean, it's his career, and that was the turning point where if he played in that game, he would have lost his red shirt, and if he didn't, then he would have kept his red shirt. And I think he kind of went into the season after he knew that he didn't get the starting job, that he was going to redshirt and probably just move on at the end of the year just because of the circumstances. But just kind of going into that game, obviously we would have loved to have him, and he would have made a difference with his experience. And just with John Rhys being banged up, you kind of lost his extra threat of being a runner. And I love John Rhys, but that legs make him truly dynamic. And if he doesn't have that, it's a lot harder for him in the game. And having Mikey would have been amazing, but with the circumstances, I have to respect his decision to not play.
Well, we win that game if he plays, or if Plumlee's healthy, right?
I think so.
Yeah. That's the hard part for me as a fan. Like, I know we could have won that game because we just beat those guys on the road a couple weeks earlier, and we saw the result there. So that's what makes it hard for me.
Well, using John Rhys with his legs in that first Tulane game was a big piece of how we won that game. And we popped some big runs really early, and that kind of gave us the leg up. And from that point on, Tulane was really playing catch up. And they made the adjustments the second time around, even with Tommy, because he was also a dynamic runner. So I think even if John Rhys was there, we wouldn't have had the early success that we had in that first game with those early runs, because they did make the adjustments.
Stephen, does and again, you can share what you want. Does Mikey sit down with like the leaders of the team and say, "Hey, here's my decision"? Like, how do you get made aware that he decided not to play in that game?
I think actually it was. I think we learned like in a team meeting one day that Gus said that he wasn't going to play. I don't remember him like ever like addressing the team about it. I think he told people individually that, "Hey, I'm not going to play," but I don't. He never addressed like the full team like, "Hey, I'm not playing." So it was kind of like his own personal decision.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of not expected it, but it everybody knew it was an option for him. And knowing what was on the table for the rest of his career, I think everyone was okay with that decision that he decided to redshirt that game.
All right, I'm going to skip the Military Bowl because I want to forget that game happened as well. that was a tough one. But we go into 2023, and a lot of the news around the team was new offensive coordinator Darren Hinshaw. And so we had heard that Gus was going to kind of give up some of the play calling. I believe the phrase he used was he was going to become the CEO of the team, focus more on recruiting, NIL, and fundraising, all that stuff. And Darren Hinshaw was going to be the coordinator. How much of a change was that for you all, having Darren come in and kind of installing his offense, his system? I'm sure Gus still had his thumbprints over the game plan and over sort of the overall scheme, if you will. But what did Darren kind of bring different? What did he kind of infuse to that offense when he got there?
I mean, really, he just brought, in a way, like a different mentality, a way of looking at things. We had a whole new terminology for the offense. A lot of things still carried over just because we knew things worked and we wanted to still use those things and take advantage of them, especially with the roster that we were bringing back. We brought back a lot of people from that 2022 team. And it was kind of just a different way of looking at it. And Coach Hinshaw had some really good ideas with how to get people into space, especially on the perimeter. And you saw the success we had passing the ball last year. I mean, 2 guys in the top 5 of the Big 12 for receiving. He kind of just had some unique ways of just getting guys in space. And it was just really good for our offense because we were able to build on our run game that was so successful in 2022 and kind of just put an extra stamp on how we got the ball to our playmakers.
Well, we have an early season nail biter at Boise, playing on the blue turf. Which, again, some people have said that was a challenge. Did you have any challenge playing on the blue turf? Was it odd for you to look down and see blue and blue jerseys and not see your typical green grass?
Not really. I mean, I've played on different types of fields. I remember I played on, I think it was Masters Field in Orlando. So it's kind of different, but like once you get a few plays on your belt, it's really not that bad.
I think it was Walter Yates told us it took him like a quarter to figure out like where the guys were moving and the difference between, the jerseys and the field there. But that ends up being a nail biter. And obviously JRP gets hurt late in the game, stays in, and Colton Boomer, kicks a field goal through to win the game. What was the excitement like for that game? Because it's obviously the first time that for the team that you had been tested. A long road. I think the longest road trip you all had last year is getting all the way out to Boise. What was that emotion like for you to kind of go in there, hard fought game on the blue turf earlier in the season, JRP kind of going down? What was that atmosphere like after Boomer hits that field goal?
For me, it almost felt like a sigh of relief just because we could have played so much better, but we just made so many mistakes offensively to the point where the game ended up being a lot closer than it really appeared. I think if you actually go back and look at the box score, I think we outgained them in all phases of the game, but just really red zone efficiency was the big killer for us. I mean, we got in the red zone multiple times and either turned the ball over or just didn't convert. And that was kind of the turning points of those games because, or the drives, because if you can't convert in the red zone or come empty handed, it's a big killer for your momentum.
Yeah, we saw that twice this year. It happened in the Boise game. It happened, I think it was West Virginia. Again, a great receiver. Obviously, he's going on to do great things in the NFL. But Javon Baker had 2 of the most unfortunate plays I've seen where the ball hits him in the hands and he's like falling to the ground, that it like slips out into the hands of a defender. Have you ever seen that before? That felt like something I watched a lot of football. I'd never seen what appeared to be a shovel pass to the defensive back from the receiver.
Yeah, sometimes in multiple sports, you kind of say the phrase of like, oh, the easy ones are always the hardest because you think you're so open, or in a basketball, if you have a wide open layup, you tend to lose focus sometimes just because of how easy it might seem. But those are the moments where you really have to focus the hardest because that's the only thing that should be on your mind is catching the ball or finishing the layup or whatever it is, because your team's counting on you, and you just have to really focus up for those moments, because if you don't, it could turn into disaster like it did in that Boise game.
Well, you mentioned you grew up watching UCF as a kid, so you saw us play in Conference USA, you saw us play in the American. Now you got to be a part of the team, the first team to play in the Big 12. One, how cool is that? And two, how big of a difference was the competition in the Big 12 this year as opposed to the American the years before?
It's definitely a step up, and I'd say the biggest difference is the size, because the O-linemen, the tight ends, the linebackers, they were just huge, and that was the biggest difference. And then also just the stadium and the crowds and the atmospheres that we went to, it was just a complete step up. I mean, we went to some of the best places in the Big 12 atmosphere-wise: Oklahoma, Kansas State, Texas Tech. I mean, they all brought their A game with their atmosphere, and it was just definitely different from the American. And it does take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, with Texas Tech, I mean, we got tortillas thrown at us, so that was definitely a different experience that I'd say I can never say will probably ever happen again.
Yeah, and those games, we were in those games that had chances to win those games, Oklahoma and Texas Tech. A couple close ones. Which one still bothers you, keeps you up at night thinking, man, that's the one that we really got away?
I'd say the biggest one is the Oklahoma, just because nobody expected us to really compete. And John Rhys, he played probably one of his best games that game. He was on point with his passes, and he was even running the ball very well, even coming off of that injury. But I remember that game specifically because a lot of players were dealing with like flu-like symptoms. Multiple players, I think it was like almost like a dozen from the team that had to get IVs before the game. They weren't in best shape, and we ended up kind of coming together as a team and just kind of picking each other up, even though we were a little shorthanded, but also just not in our best shape.
And then we get down to the 2-point conversion at the end.
Your Jordan flu game, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like our team's flu game in that way.
Except we couldn't pull it off because that 2-point conversion at the end. I mean, how much did you guys practice that play? Is there an option to change out of it if they don't like the way the defense is set up, or that's the play and we're running it?
In the game plan, that was the play and we were running it, and we had actually had that play ready to go for multiple weeks, and we repped it every single week up until that point, and it just ended up not working out. I mean, it was a good play. The defense kind of caught onto it late. It was still kind of open, but it would definitely would have been a risky pass. And on trickery with 2-point plays, it's kind of almost like a standard now. You see it a lot around college football. So I'm definitely not mad at the play call. In my mind, it was the right play call, just because in that moment you kind of have to dial up your best play. And you kind of see teams like Boise State back in the day with Chris Peterson, and they did a whole bunch of trickery stuff. And if it ends up working out, you look like the smartest coach in the world. If it doesn't, you look like the dumbest. So you kind of have to applaud in a way, just the creativity. But it just didn't work out. That's the end of the day.
Yeah, I can imagine them getting sacked on that Statue of Liberty play against Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, they would have looked like the dumbest people alive. The game on the line, and you run a Statue of Liberty and you get sacked. It's like, well, what were they thinking? You know?
That would have been funny, at least.
I like how you and Mike talked about toughest games, and neither one of you brought up Baylor, which is the way it should be, Stephen, because I'm also not over the Baylor game. How long did it take you guys to kind of get past that? I know you had the 24-hour rule, as Gus called it, right? But let's be honest, that one had to stick for a little bit. Just the way that broke down, huge lead, Big 12 home opener. Things are looking great. Did that stick with you all for a couple of weeks? Did it take a long time to kind of get the hangover of that game off you?
In a way, a little bit, because it was always kind of in the back of our mind. But as football players, you have to turn the page. You can't let things sulk, or else the season will end really poorly. So in a way, you have to learn from it, but you also do have to turn the page.
If the season had started and I told you that you guys were going to go on a 5-game losing streak, what would you have told me?
I probably would say, what the hell happened?
All right. So what the hell happened, Stephen?
I mean, it was just a different experience, you know. It was Big 12 competition. You have to bring your A game every single game in those against those teams. And going into the season, you always have high expectations, but you don't really understand the level of the competition until you get there.
Obviously, you're a veteran guy in the team at that point, right? Who are the veteran guys trying to keep everyone together, right? Because to your point, it's easy to all of a sudden say, okay, this season's a wash. You lost 5 in a row, but the team never really gave up that fight, right? To your point,
Mhm.
you were in every game. You were fighting every game. Who were kind of the leaders that rallied everyone around and say, hey, listen, like, let's move on. Let's keep this thing going forward. Let's keep focused. Who were those guys that really grabbed everyone together and made that thing stay on track?
It was really our team leaders, John Rhys, Lokahi, trying to think of some other guys, Alec. Like those were the guys that kind of made it happen because at the end of the day, it was their last year. And most of the speeches that they gave were, I'm not going to let my career end like this. I'm not going to let my career end on a 9 or 7 or 8 game losing streak because I'm not going to let that happen. And they try to just get the younger guys to understand the importance of that. And so that was a big thing where they kind of pushed that agenda where we're getting to a bowl game because I've been in college for 4 or 5, 6 years, and I'm not going to let my last season end in a losing season.
I like how you threw the 6 in there for Alec Collar. He actually told us though that there was one point where you guys kicked the coaches out of the room, and JRP kind of had a passionate speech. Do you remember that sort of players only meeting and sort of what that tenor was like and what JRP kind of said to the team that day?
Yeah, that's kind of what I just described, where he made it clear that he's not going to go out bad in his college career, and he was going to end in a strong fashion. So that was kind of the message that he gave at the time. So everyone kind of bought in after that, and we made sure that those guys ended in kind of the right way. Obviously, it was hard because of the losses that we had early in the season, but I thought we actually ended up making a progressive increase in terms of our play throughout the end of the season.
Yeah, he went 3 of the last 4. I know technically the first Big 12 win was at Cincinnati. I don't really count that because to me, Cincinnati was still like us. They're a new Big 12 team. The first real Big 12 win was the space game against Oklahoma State, and everything went right that day. Such a cool day to be a part of. I mean, you get the space uniforms on. It's raining, kind of gives it that extra cool feel on TV anyway. How awesome was that day?
I mean, I always say that playing rainy games is like playing in the backyard because you kind of just throw all of the general like rules out of the equation and you just play ball. And I think that's always the most fun. Some of my best memories as a kid playing football in the backyard were the ones where it's rainy and nobody cares what they look like and nobody cares how dirty their clothes are. You just go out and have fun. And I think that was the biggest thing is we obviously came into that game with an expectation that we were going to play better and we were going to have a game plan and stop one of the hottest teams in college football at the time. But the circumstances ended up working out for us where we had more experience playing in the rain as people from Florida, and we had better equipment set up for that game. So it ended up just working out in our favor.
How often do you guys practice in the rain? You have the indoor practice facility, but they still keep you out there unless there's lightning. Are you still practicing outside even if it's raining?
Yeah. So the way it worked is as long as there was no lightning, we were practicing outside. And, you know, we actually, late in the season, I think it was after the Oklahoma State game, we had a big downpour during a practice. And it kind of reminded everybody of the success we had in the Oklahoma State game. And so we kind of embraced it in a way during those practices because, you know, some people, they get mad if it's rain. It's like, oh, it's hard to whatever. But I think it's always more fun to play in the rain.
And how much does the space uniform stuff play into it? I mean, the fans go crazy about it. Are you guys that excited when you see those things hanging in the locker room? Oh, it's a space game. This is our day.
Yeah, I think it does kind of play into a way because it's just an extra special game. I mean, the uniforms themselves don't mean that much. I mean, obviously they're cool and they're cool to wear and put on and kind of represent a side of UCF that doesn't really get seen as often. But it kind of just is an extra motivation for us. It's like that we're playing in the space game. We're not losing on the space game. So I think we're still undefeated even after 6 or 7 years of space games. So we're kind of playing into that right now.
Steve, one of the things UCF's been known for is wide receivers blocking downfield. You mentioned earlier that part of your assignment was blocking. How much did the talk about Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State? I think he had run for like 1,000,000 yards before that. Everyone said he was just going to run for another gajillion yards against UCF. And you all turn around being like, we have a fantastic running back in RJ Harvey. How much did you all offensively want to like make sure people recognize that, hey, this guy's good over here, but you should take a look at our guy? Did you guys take that personally, that there was so much chatter about Ollie Gordon?
Yeah, I think the defense especially took it up personally. I remember just leading up into that week that the defense kind of had like a vendetta against Ollie because he had been getting so much attention and that there was so much buzz that he was going to have a breakout game against UCF. So the defense kind of had an extra motivation to stop him, and they did. They played extremely well. The front seven played great. We had a game plan set up where safeties were in the box at a lot of times, and also the rain kind of helped us out in that way because we were able to just stuff the box because we knew that you couldn't throw the ball more than 20 yards downfield.
I know you were in the green room when we were talking about RJ and the Nobles. Can you describe RJ Harvey? Hey, he looks like a giant human, but like the actual physical transformation from when he got to UCF to where he is now is just fantastic. But can you describe him as a running back? Because he looks like, kind of bowling ball, but he's got a ton of speed, he's got a ton of shiftiness. Can you describe RJ Harvey?
Yeah, I actually have a pretty long history of playing against RJ. We played against each other in high school because he went to Edgewater and I went to Bishop Moore. So I kind of, in a way, grew up playing against him. And he's always just been an extremely freakish athlete. He's kind of like Doug Martin. They called him the muscle hamster. I kind of see him in the same way. He's not the biggest guy, but he's like in terms of height, but he's very strong. In the weight room, he's one of the strongest people on the team, which says a lot about him and kind of the work ethic that he has. But he's just a dynamic player because he can break a big run at any time. But also he just does the little things right, and he's a very humble player. He doesn't talk a whole bunch. He kind of is very humble and soft spoken. So he's been challenged a bunch of times, especially when I was there, to kind of step up and be a leader, but that's really not his strong suit. He's the kind of guy that just does his job, and he's a lead from example type of person.
And then describe that wide receiver room you were in, because you got some characters in there with Kobe, with Javon, obviously Xavier Townsend. You had some characters in that. Describe that camaraderie you all had as a wide receiver group.
Yeah, there were a bunch of different personalities in that group, and I think we all kind of meshed together very well. And Kobe was kind of the leader of that group in terms of the outspoken leader, and Javon kind of piggybacked off of him off times, but he wasn't really a vocal leader like Kobe was. And the next, kind of like RJ, was a lead by example type of person. But for me, my role was kind of interesting in that group because I was almost like the dad of the group. I was the guy that was almost like the player coach, where some of the coaches would say, like, if you have any questions about the playbook, call Stephen. I was like, I kind of took on that role as like that the older guy that had been around for a long time. I was one of the oldest guys in the room at that point, my last year there. So a lot of people had a lot of trust in me from the mental side of football to really understand everything that's going on. I played multiple positions, and that was kind of my role in that room too.
Did they call you Pops or anything like that?
No, but sometimes people would call me old man.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, I think coming this year, everybody's expecting Kobe to have a big year, Xavier Townsend to have a big year. Who's the other guy in that room that you've seen that you expect to break out that maybe fans are not ready for yet?
I think a lot of people are sleeping on Trent, especially because he didn't have a lot of touches last year. But before I left, he was in the starting rotation, and he was getting a lot of big catches and scrimmages and practices. And so I know he was kind of under the radar last year, but I expect him to make a big jump this year.
All right. And just sum up that last season for us. We end up going 6-7. We lose that bowl game to Georgia Tech. Is it a disappointing year? Is it okay considering that we stepped up to the Big 12? How do you sum up the 2023 season?
I don't think you can ever say that a 6-7 season is acceptable, especially with the amount of close games that we had. So it was obviously a little disappointing just based on the results that we had. But at the end of the day, you can never turn back the clock. The past is always 2020, so you can always say that, oh, we could have made this play or done this and we would have had a better season. But as I said earlier, as football players, you kind of have to turn the page and move on.
And now next for you, you're moving on to Samford, right? That's Samford's in
Yeah.
Georgia. It's not Samford down the street from UCF, right?
It's in Alabama, actually.
It's Alabama.
Even better.
I thought it was in Georgia.
Yeah. I actually just got here this week, so I'm kind of starting my journey right now. This is actually my dorm that I'm staying in for the summer, just because I committed so late and it was late notice that they just stuck me in a dorm for the summer.
And how are you liking it so far? It's okay?
It's been great. I've meeting a lot of new people, just trying to find my role on this team. And, just learning a new offense is always interesting. And especially the way that they do things, they're very up-tempo. It reminds me in a way of the way that Coach Heupel ran his system.
Steven, what drove the decision to change? We saw you in spring camp. You were at the podium. You were talking a lot about upcoming season. What kind of drove your decision to say, hey, maybe it's time for me to try something new?
It was really just about the playing time, and I had kind of gone into the spring ball as kind of an evaluation period for myself to see if I wanted to spend my last year of eligibility at UCF. And just going through spring ball and talking to coaches afterwards and exit meetings, it was just the best decision for me to move on. As much as I wanted to stay at UCF, I want to spend my last year at a place where I have a real opportunity to get some big playing time and a lot of experience on the field.
So how's this going to work? I mean, you're a lifelong UCF fan. You're obviously going to be pretty tied up with your own team, your own games. Are you going to try to watch games? Or are you going to try to figure out what's going on? Like, how are you going to balance playing on one team, but maybe I assume still rooting for your friends on the other team?
I'm always going to root for UCF no matter where I am, just because I graduated from there. I grew up watching it. So if there's ever an opportunity where I can watch a game, if we play early in the day and there's a night game for UCF, I'll always try to do that, especially just because a lot of my friends and my old teammates are still playing at UCF. So obviously I want to root for them and root for my team that I grew up watching.
So are your parents going to go watch your games? Or are they going to go to UCF? Has that been decided yet?
They said they're going to end up making a lot of journeys up to Birmingham. I don't know what exactly that they're going to end up doing, but I think they want to watch me for my last season too. They can always go watch more UCF games after I'm done playing.
That seems like the right decision. Yeah, it seems like but maybe they're going to the swamp, Stephen. I mean, that could be a big one. Maybe you got a bye week that week. But we end every interview around here with what we call rapid fire questions. Could be music, movies, sports, TV shows. You never know what you're going to get. So are you prepared now to face our rapid fire questions?
I guess I don't really have a choice.
You really don't. I apologize in advance for that.
So nobody's ever said no and just signed off.
No one's ever said no. That's correct. And let's hope you're not the first. All right, looking up your stats, you're 6'5", 210. Look like you're in really good shape. Look like you work out a lot. I'm trying to get into a diet program, Stephen. I need to lean up a little bit. Give me a diet program to help me lean out. What should I eat? What keto, macros? Give me some advice here. What do I do to lean out a little bit?
Well, I went through a little weight loss program myself because I wanted to shed a few pounds going into the 2023 season. And kind of the big thing that I kind of stopped eating breakfast in a way. I would just have like a small thing of like oatmeal or oats, and then I'd have a big salad for lunch that was done by Garvey. And Garvey is one of the best nutrition staffs and dining halls that I could have ever asked for at UCF, because they had everything that you could ever ask for. And they always try to work with the players on specific diets. So normally what I would do is I'd just get a big salad for lunch, and then when dinner rolled around, just try to stick to a protein and some rice and vegetables. So I'd really say is the biggest thing that actually I did for my diet was I cut out a lot of sugared drinks. I tried to stick to water only. And that's a big portion of it, because a lot of the sugar.
Big water right here. Big water right here. Yeah.
So a lot of the sugar that a lot of people take in is through the drinks that they have. And I've never been a big soda guy, but I do drink a lot of like teas or lemonade. So cutting that out was a big piece for me to stop just taking in extra sugar. And I also got on a few different supplements as well. If you're working out a lot, I would definitely recommend collagen or creatine or both, because they help you just build muscle mass, but also it helps you because you need to stay hydrated on those supplements. So it'll give you extra reminders to keep drinking water, and eventually you will shed a few pounds. It's not going to be an insane amount, like a big, huge weight drop, but it'll definitely help you get into leaner type of shape.
Look at this guy, Mike. He's got fitness tips and everything. I love this kid.
All right, this week the NBA finals are going to get underway. The Stanley Cup finals are going to get underway. Are you into either of those, basketball or hockey? And who do you like to win those series?
Yeah, I'm actually a really big basketball fan. That was my first sport growing up. So it was always my dream actually to play college basketball and not college football. But that's a story for another time. But I'm a big NBA fan, and going into this series, I think the Boston Celtics are kind of like the no-brainer pick. But I would love to see an upset by the Mavericks.
Boston's kind of had an easy way there so far, right?
They haven't played anybody.
Yeah, they've gotten a little lucky with some injuries. But even if those injuries weren't there, I think they would have cruised their way through the finals. I think right now they're by far the best team in the NBA roster-wise, but also team camaraderie and star power.
And nothing on hockey, you don't care at all?
I've never been a big hockey guy. I grew up in Florida, so it's not like I grew up playing hockey. There's really no ice rinks around Orlando.
All right. Well, there's a Florida team in the final. I'm a big fan. So if you have nothing to do Saturday night, check it out. I highly suggest it. It's a fun sport to watch, man. Get into it.
I might have to. I've just started getting into baseball. I've never been a big baseball guy, so I'm starting to get into that now. So the MLB has kind of captured my attention.
Well, I swear I had this question down before you said this, but I was going to ask you. You mentioned earlier you were a basketball player. Can I get a scouting report? Can I get a scouting report on Stephen Martin? What am I getting Stephen Martin on the basketball court?
You're getting a shooter, you're getting a rim protector, and you're getting just a high IQ basketball player. A lot of the players that I played with, and I still do play some pickup basketball, especially before I came up to Sanford. That was my main form of conditioning that I did, because to me, basketball is the most fun form of conditioning. And a lot of the players that I ended up playing with, either at the rec center, UCF, or at a gym, they were always just infatuated with my basketball IQ, even though I haven't played in such a long time.
Well, you're 6'5". What are you, a 3-man? Are you a stretch 4? What's your position?
In high school, I was mostly a stretch 4, but if I were to play in college, I probably would have been a wing, a 3.
Did you ever walk over to Addition Financial and knock on Johnny Dawkins' door and say, "Hey, man, like you're losing a lot of guys in the portal. Like I can maybe help out. I mean, I'm here if you need me."
It was always a big bucket list for me to play on the UCF basketball team, but that opportunity has kind of passed. But with the academic interest that I had, it was kind of not possible to do both football, basketball, and be an engineering student. So even as much as I would have wanted to, I don't think it really would have happened.
I mean, your former offensive coordinator, Darren Hinshaw, played basketball at UCF.
Yeah.
Well. You could have been the next on that line there. I mean, JRP and the baseball, football, yeah, that's old news. But you could have been basketball and football. That could have been fantastic. But I guess we'll never know, right?
Right.
What about at Sanford? No, they don't, no space for you there on the basketball team?
I don't know the coach. I mean, maybe I can walk over to his office one day and introduce myself, but we'll see, I guess.
You've walked on before. I mean, it's possible.
Right.
All right. So who's on this team, on the UCF football team, that is the funniest guy that you're gonna miss hanging out with the most?
I'd probably have to say Jordan Davis. I mean, he was one of my really good buds, and we're the same age. We ended up coming in at the same time, and we didn't live together in the dorms, but we were right across the hall from each other. We ended up hanging out a bunch, and he's really one of my best friends in the team that's still there. With the age of the transfer portal, it's hard to find guys that stick around at a college for a long period of time. But, I'm always rooting for Jordan, especially with all of the injuries that he's had in the past. He's a true warrior. Just the amount of times that he's been able to come back and really just stick with it. I mean, he's had, I think, 3 or 4 knee surgeries over the past 4 years. And that, for me, I've only had one, and that was hard to come back from. I can't even imagine doing it multiple times. So whenever he was going through his rehab, I always tried to stick by his side and encourage him to keep going. But he's probably the funniest guy in the team by far.
Exciting news for a lot of college football fans, Stephen. The EA Sports video game is coming back, EA Sports 25. So a couple of questions. One, will you get the game? And then two, will you play with your team and use yourself as kind of the main player?
I actually have already pre-ordered the game, so
okay.
It'll be coming in, and when it starts in July, I'll definitely be playing it, especially because I grew up playing those older games on the PS3, and that was always my favorite game growing up. And it'll be special for me to just, see the game back in action, especially with the live players. But I don't think I'll be in the game, unfortunately. I don't think they have FCS teams in the game, so kind of sucks because I probably would have been in the game had I stayed at UCF, but for the circumstances, I had to make the best decision for my career.
Well, you could always create a player, give yourself like 99s across the board, and then just see what happens, Stephen. It still work out for you.
Yeah, it's just not the same, unfortunately. I mean, I could do all I want, but it's not the same as actually being in the game created by EA.
Were guys at UCF excited about that? I know, again, of fans, I mean, it's been since 2014, the last time they had a game. Were guys legit excited about, like, it's coming back, I'm going to be in the game, I can't wait to play? Was there legit excitement about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were really excited for it. I don't think there was a single player at UCF that didn't sign the deal to be in the game. So for all the fans out there looking forward to playing with UCF, I think you'll be able to use the full roster.
All right, what was your favorite place to hang out in Orlando when it was time to go out? I'm not talking about like out to eat. I'm talking about you guys went to go party. Where was the parties at?
I'm actually not a big partier myself. I rarely ever go out. Right before I left, some of the guys actually had to drag me out and convince me to go before I left, just because they're like, "Oh, we're not going to see you again for a while." But I was always like, "I'll be back in January. You guys aren't going to miss me for that long." But most of the college bars around UCF I ended up going to, but I really wasn't a big going out person, so I can't give you that much insight on that. It was really wherever my friends were going, I just kind of tagged along.
All right, I need your help with something, Stephen. I am convinced that John Rhys Plumlee is the nicest, most perfect human on earth. You can't find a thing wrong with this guy. He plays the piano, he plays baseball, he plays football, he's good looking, he's in shape, great haircut. Can you give me something he's not good at? I think Walter Yates told us that he burps a lot, maybe, but can you give me something about John Rhys Plumlee that isn't a positive? Does he bite his fingernails? Does he snore? I need something that John Rhys does not do wonderfully.
I can't say I've ever seen it, but I've heard that he's not the best basketball player. Okay. So that might be something I have a one leg up on him for.
Okay.
But yeah, he's definitely a guy that he does a lot of things really well, and he's ultra competitive. So whatever he does, he's going to try and win. An interesting little tidbit from my time is that I play the drums. Actually, that's one of my hobbies on the side. And I bought a drum set for my dad because he's learning how to play for Christmas. And I got it on Facebook Marketplace in November. And I ended up having it in the house for a little while. And he came over one time and was just all in on the drums. And I was teaching him. And he actually picked it up pretty quick.
Of course he did. Of course he did. Of course he did.
He wasn't the best, but he definitely is a quick learner.
And then he went in the kitchen and probably made you like a 5-course meal, right? I mean, this guy had everything. I don't understand it. It's unbelievable.
He's definitely one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life.
All right, so you're into rock. What's your favorite band?
I have a few big bands. I like Boston. I like Rush. I like Kansas. I like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm more of a classic rock type of guy, and I kind of credit that to my dad because he showed me all those bands growing up in the car. I think it's been a big meme now that like a bunch of kids my age like grew up listening to rock mostly because of their dads. So I credit him for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, your Twitter or X, whatever we call it now, your Twitter or X handle starts with an underscore. That's certainly a choice, Stephen. You had other options here. How challenging is it that you have to explain to people that your Twitter handle is an underscore first before your name?
I don't think I've actually had to explain it to anyone. I try to just mirror my Instagram handle, but the username was taken. So I was like, okay, let me try Stephen _Martin. And that was taken. So I'm like, okay, let me throw an underscore before my name. It was really just kind of a cat and mouse game when trying to pick a simple username that wasn't taken already. I have a very common name, so it's kind of hard to do sometimes.
Do you have a nickname? Do your friends call you by a nickname?
I've had a few float around. I never actually picked a nickname for myself. Mostly I was called Steve-O on the UCF football team. I was mostly called Big Steve in high school. And whatever people call me, I kind of just let it stick. I don't really have a preference.
I'd have kept Big Steve. I feel like that could be marketable for other stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so you're into engineering. What field within engineering? Where are you looking to work for after football's over?
Yeah, so I'm really interested in self-driving cars and the technology that goes into them. So a lot of the classes that I ended up taking in my electives towards the end of my degree at UCF were really catered towards computer vision and artificial intelligence. It's such a big growing field now in today's age, especially with the AI that you see on the commercial side of everything with the Chat GPT and Microsoft's Copilot, and it's kind of taking over in a way. But that's kind of the things I want to get into. I really want to stay in Orlando initially because I actually just got accepted into grad school at UCF to start a degree in engineering management in spring. So I want to stay around UCF and kind of start my master's degree and get into that field of engineering because it's really important to me with the education that I got, and also just something I'm very interested in.
How far away do you think we are from every car just being a self-driving car? 10, 20 years?
I think it's still pretty far away. I think what a lot of the cars you see now with like the adaptive cruise control and the lane assist and the highway lane assist, it's a step in the right direction, but I still think we're really far away from self-driving cars being a true commercial product, especially just because the amount of computing that it takes, that it's hard to fit into a car.
I forget that, Stephen. How far away are we away from the old cartoon, The Jetsons, where we're just flying in spaceships? How far are we from that?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I think the flying cars are not up my alley. I think it's definitely something that will be done in the future, but I don't even know if it'll be in my lifetime.
All right. Well, wake me up when the Jetsons comes to real life. But all right, we'll get you out of here in this last question, Stephen. 10 years from now, if you look back on your time at UCF, the thing you'll remember the most is what?
I'd probably just say the relationships that I made. You know, seeing the people come and go through UCF, it was just really awesome to meet a bunch of new people, and just the experiences that I had with them were awesome because, you know, going through college football isn't easy, but the people around you really what make it a lot better. And you know, the dog days of fall camp, I wouldn't get through it without my friends that I had and the fun times we had. In the breaks, we would go like play ping pong in the players' lounge, or just mess around and goof around. Those are the moments that get you through those hard days of college football. And I'll always cherish those times with my friends. And I look forward to just keeping those relationships together because they say through college football and college athletics is that those are your friends for life. And I really look forward to keeping those relationships no matter where my friends are all around the country.
Well, Stephen, we appreciate you taking so much time out of your schedule to join us on the show. We wish you the best of luck this upcoming season. Stay healthy. Hopefully you all have a successful year, and hopefully we'll see you back in Orlando really soon. And maybe this time you'll get to see a game from the stands again. So it'll be kind of a change for you, but hopefully we'll get to see you back there. But stay healthy, and hopefully we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate it. Thank you.